Starship will allow us to fly the heaviest payloads ever flown, land humans on the moon again after more than a half century, and ultimately fly humans further into space than ever before, even to Mars. But the most important thing about Starship is that it's designed to be a fully, rapidly reusable, reliable rocket, or what we like to call the 4 Rs, and we'll talk more about those later in the webcast. But before we dive into the details of today's test,
不管您现在在世界哪一个角落，也欢迎您跟我们一起关注星舰发射。您现在看到的是德州星舰基地星舰结合助推段第3次试射的直播画面。这是上一次发射时的一个重播的一个画面星舰结合超载重助推段第3次试飞，路线与前2次不同。第3次降落目标区现在定在印度洋，而不是前2次的夏威夷附近。预定飞行时间也从原来的90分钟缩短到65分钟。我们来看现场的相关解说。
and initiated the boost back burn. However, about 30 seconds into that burn, it experienced a rapid unscheduled disassembly, or RUD. That's SpaceX speak for an exciting end to the booster's journey. Three and a half minutes into the flight, about 90 kilometers over the Gulf of Mexico, so well away from people.
Now on Starship, the 6 second stage Raptor engines all started successfully at separation, and everything was going normally in the ship's climb to space until about 7 minutes into the flight, when we began a planned vent of excess liquid oxygen propellant. To simulate the mass of a payload and get future-focused data, the ship was loaded with extra propellant that we needed to get rid of or vent before re-entry. Once we started venting, though, a leak developed that caused fires, which eventually.
我们可以看到，目前推进剂正在装填，目前倒计时的时间是在27分40秒。我们也利用一点时间来看今天的一个发射的一个程序我们来看一下这个发射前的一个程序。这是为您准备在发射进行前一些相关的准备。可以看到就是目前是在装填燃料当中。如果细心的网友可以发现这一次装填的顺序其实跟上一次有非常大的不同。上一次是从这个助推段先开始装，然后再开始星舰，也就是上层段。那这一次是先从上层段开始装，然后再装助推器。但是呢助推器会先装载完成，可以看到在3分30秒的时候，助推器的这个推进剂应该装填完成。在2分50秒的时候，星舰的本身的液态氧跟液态甲烷是装填完成，所以这是在发射前的一个准备的一个动作。我们继续来关心现场的一些画面。
While maximizing public safety. So let's take a closer look at the flight test profile. Now, about 26 minutes from now, Super Heavy will ignite its 33 Raptor engines and lift off from Starbase. About 3 minutes into the flight, Super Heavy's booster will separate from the ship in SpaceX's second ever attempt at a hot stage separation. That means it'll light its engines while still attached to a partially lit booster.
现在正在讲解发射后的一些相关动作，也为您这个准备有关于这个发射后的一些程序。大家可以看到，这个红色部分是这一次新增加的一些这个演练程序包括载荷舱门要打开、推进剂输送转换，以及这个猛禽在太空中重新点火。这是在这个目前的一些状况，我们继续来关心现场的画面。
And from there, the ship will head toward its destination, splashdown location in the Indian Ocean. Again, if we get past a successful stage separation and a full ascent burn with the upper stage, it will be at an added altitude and trajectory below orbital, meaning Starship won't have to fire its Raptor engines for a deorbit burn, and it will naturally come back into the atmosphere no matter what.
Now, meanwhile, the Super Heavy is going to attempt a landing burn before splashing down into the Gulf. And while we are going to practice a landing, we aren't planning to recover any of the hardware from Super Heavy.
刚才有网友特别提到，就是说这一次跟上一次其实有很大的不同。星舰这一次测试新的科目，包括要开启和关闭载荷舱门，这个也是未来为这个所谓星链发射做这个预习和准备啊。同时还有一个非常重要的科目，就是在不同储存槽之间进行推进剂的转换跟输送。这个科目为未来星舰在近地轨道设立这个燃料储存槽，可以说是先进行演练，是演给这个 NASA 看的，表示Starship 是有能力可以进行推进剂输送转换。另外还有一个新的科目，就是猛禽引擎要在太空中重新点火，并且在控制下重返地球，这是与上一次非常不同的地方。我们继续来关心现场的状况。
And we did that and got a lot of great data that helped us improve the vehicle and the pad infrastructure that you see today. The primary goal of Flight 2 was to get all the way to stage separation, which we did, and even got a little extra.
For Flight 3, we've added some ambitious tests highlighted by an attempt to transfer several tons of propellant.
刚才现场解说也特别提到，就是上一次所取得一些进展，上一次成功进行热分离而且滞空时间比上一次更久。我们也发现这个地面的这个发射场也做了一些完善跟改善，可以说是有长足的进步。我们继续来关心现场的一些解说，现场的解说员这个 Cat。就是这位女性的解说员实际上是非常这个有来头。待会如果有时间的话，也能够为您介绍。她本身也是工程背景出身，并且因为转播这个SpaceX 的一些相关发射甚至得到美国的艾美奖。
Now, we're also attempting the first ever relight of a Raptor engine in space, and we'll need that capability for future in-space maneuvers and deorbit burns. It's important to note that what we'll attempt today is not a burn required for Starship to re-enter on today's test. We are intentionally flying this new steeper trajectory so we can test things like engine relights without substantially changing where we expect to splash down. And if Starship manages to make it all the way to re-entry, we will collect valuable data on the vehicle as it flies through the Earth's atmosphere at hypersonic.
听到的是目前正在解说的，就是这一次星舰重返地球，跟上一次有非常这个大的不同跟规划今天的预定飞行时间只有短短的65分钟，跟前两次预计的90分钟有非常大的不同。同时，降落的目标区现在也改为在印度洋，说是可以避免经过人口稠密区也更为安全。星舰的成败跟 NASA 重新登月计划其实有相当密切的关系阿提米斯计划不但要利用星舰在近地轨道建立推进剂的储存槽，星舰改良版本还将从环越轨道的门户空间站接运太空人往返月球。这一次发射的这个操纵助推段是这个10号，另外这个星舰是由28号原型舰担任这一次的试射，距离11月18号的第二次试射已经将近有4个月的时间。这一次2节火箭在这个下沉段，也就是助推段本身有33台使用液态甲烷跟液态氧为推进剂的猛禽2发动机，上沉段也就是这个星舰28号原型舰有6台发动机，其中包括有3台是在真空状态下真空版本的发动机。 我们来听现场的相关解说。
Below our limits, but there could be a hold at T-minus 40 seconds just to make sure that the winds are acceptable before we go. We are actively loading propellant on board the vehicle. You can see by the frost lines starting to build up. Looks like we're about 80% on the ship main tanks right now and a little over 60% on the booster. Now, Starship uses liquid methane as its fuel, liquid oxygen as its oxidizer. Both of those get cooled down.
刚才现场的解说有提到，这个风势是一个考量哦。目前他们正在密切关注。另外，在这个画面的左边可以看到目前的燃料装填的状态，应该说是推进剂比较精确。它在目前的状态，在上面的一个读数就是 CH4， 这是这个液态甲烷。另外 LOX 是液态氧。目前上层段，也就是星舰本身装填的进度可以说是非常的快速。
That's about 5 minutes longer than we take on Falcon 9, but we're doing it with 10 times the amount of propellant. Now, the propellant load on ship started at about T-minus 53 minutes, booster right around T-minus 42 minutes. We are about to pause loading on the main tanks of ship, switch over to the header tanks, and then switch back to close out the main tanks. We're expecting all of the prop to be on ship at about T-minus 3 minutes 30 seconds, and then booster prop load ends at T-minus 2 minutes.
这个是为您准备的一些程序就是刚才现场解说有提到，在这个发射前53分钟的时候，他们会先为星舰装填液态氧，在51分钟开始装填液态甲烷这个是目前进行的程序。下一个重要的程序是这个要开始冷却猛禽引擎，是在发射前的19分钟。
If we can't make our test today, we have backup launch opportunities in the coming days. Could be 24 to 48 hours, all just depends on how far we get into the count. So check back in with everybody in just a little bit. For now, though, I'm going to send it back to Kate and Shiva out at Hawthorne.
Thanks, Dan. The countdown is continuing to progress, so let's take a closer look at the world's...
刚才解说也预留伏笔说未来的几天已经准备了备用发射时间，要隔24小时，也就是说今天若是不能发射，明天不会有机会，至少要等到后天，这是目前我所能得知的状况。事实上现在在看的是目前星舰的一个高度这一次我们知道也是进行热分离，所以有加装这个一个所谓的环状的这个分离环，也把整个这个星舰的高度稍稍垫高了，大概有1公尺左右。
In terms of size, the Super Heavy booster alone stands about 71 meters or 233 feet tall and is about the same height as a fully integrated Falcon 9. The ship stands about 50 meters or 160 feet tall. Stacked together, the booster and the ship are by far taller than the statue.
现在两个组合两节加起来的高度大概在121公尺，我也特别查了一下星舰直径9公尺是什么样的一个意味我去特别查了一下，在这个所谓的这个空中巴士、空中客车 A380它的客舱的宽度大概在6公尺左右，5-6公尺左右。那所以您可以看到，就是说这个星舰的直径9公尺是一个相当大的一个空间所以跟这个比这个 A380 的客舱的宽度 都还要宽上将近50%，所以可以说是一个庞然大物。另外，星舰超载重助推段33具猛禽的发动机可以产生这个7590吨，也大概是1670万磅的推力已经写下最大推力火箭的记录。另外，推力甚至是这个 NASA SLS 火箭的1倍。
Hexagonal ceramic tiles. Those are designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry, where temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. One of our test objectives today is to verify how Starship systems and thermal protection system tiles perform during reentry. And in between the first and second stages is our hot stage, which is critical for our newest separation technique, which we saw in action during flight test 2.
上次跟我们一起关心这个发射直播的朋友应该还记得，上次是首次进行这个星舰的热分离。所谓的热分离，也就是在第2节星舰要先点火以后再进行分离。像上次一样，星舰和助推段之间是有加装了协助热分离的 Hot Staging Ring。今天组合发射2节加起来的高度差不多是121公尺。
We maximize the vehicle's performance by leaving 3 first-stage engines on, so gravity can't rob us of precious velocity, or at least not as much. Hot staging also helps to ensure the ship's liquid propellants are at the bottom of the propellant tanks, which is where we need them to be in order to quickly light.
上次发射直播，大家有注意这个现场的女主持人，说她反应非常的机敏事实上，她本身是工程背景，也是 IVD， 也就是常春藤宾大的优秀毕业生，本身参与过多项的工程计划，曾经为这个 F-35战斗机的引擎开发参与这个工程的工作，也进行很多不同项目的工程开发。他们还因为转播这个这个应该是猎鹰9号发射往来这个国际空间站的一个转播节目，获得美国的诺贝尔奖。对不起，获得美国的艾美奖。
Expected to have, and we were using these to do human factors demonstrations and figure out the layout of the elevator. So all awesome development work for a future moon mission.
Super cool.
我们刚刚提到这位女主持人非常优秀，她实际上也进行非常多的公益跟解说活动，也常常到一些不同的学校是发表一些演讲。她也是这个我们刚刚说到是电视艾美奖的得主。
You couldn't have said it better, Kate. And the moon is just the proving ground. It's just the start. When the time comes to make the leap to Mars, everything ramps up by orders of magnitude. The logistics of supporting an entire city on Mars are daunting and will require
距离预定发射时间11分57秒。
And today's flight test is one more step toward that ultimate goal. We're currently at T-minus 11 minutes, 47 seconds. Let's check in with Dan once again for a countdown update.
Hey, Kate. Still good news from down here at Starbase. We're not tracking any technical issues that are going to block us to a launch. Our T0 time still holding to 8:25 a.m. Central, so just about 11 and a half minutes from now. The real thing we're going to keep an eye on is the winds once we get there. We do have that potential hold at T-minus 40 seconds where we can hang out and either let winds die down, make sure we're in the right structural limits, everything like that. So don't be surprised if we do a hold at T-minus 40. We've done those on previous flights, but we are not tracking any technical issues. The range is going to be green for launch, so all that really great news. We're still loading propellant on the vehicle, on the ship. We're just about done loading the header tanks, the 2 smaller tanks in the top. And then we'll go back to the main tanks. They're about 85% full. And then booster, both fuel and LOX over 80%. So looking good there. The launch pad itself is getting ready for liftoff. We commanded the booster hold downs open already about 20 minutes ago or so. And then that just means that once that rocket has sufficient thrust to overcome its weight, your thrust to weight ratio goes over 1, it's going to lift off. We don't have a command to actually release the hold downs once it starts up. Just also a reminder, actual liftoff happens a few seconds after you see those engines ignite. So you'll see fire and then a few seconds before Starship really starts to take to the skies. Our range team just going to keep on making sure land, sea, air are all clear as we really count down. But that's the latest. We're just coming up on 10 minutes before launch. Everything looking good for Starship's 3rd test flight. I'll toss it back to you guys in Hawthorne.
Great, thanks, Dan.
我们刚刚听到是德州这个星舰基地发射场的一个现场解说。目前是在同时进行这个加州的哈颂是转播台所在的位置，也距离我现在所在的位置并不算太远。另外就是在德州是发射的现场。
Further by reflying both stages with little downtime between flights, and we plan to fly as often as possible. As we mentioned earlier, rapid and complete reusability is critical to enabling routine spaceflight. The team at Starbase has been hard at work developing and manufacturing the hardware that will ultimately take humans back and forth to the moon.
看几位朋友在讨论到底几分会进行发射，跟大家解说一下。现在距离这个发射的预定时间是在这个还有大概9分多钟，但是大家不要忘记，在30秒，也就是交由电脑进行自动发射程序之前还会进行各部门的回报跟清点，那个时候时间会暂停，所以真正的发射时间会往后延迟一些。如果一切顺利的话，大概在25分、26分左右进行发射。
Now, if you're thinking that this sounds hard or even impossible to do, well, that's the inspiration for naming them chopsticks.
我们刚刚看到这个小萤幕，这个是在南加州的哈颂，也就是距离洛杉矶机场附近不远的一个转播现场，也是这个 SpaceX 它的企业总部的所在地。
Super heavy boosters built with more coming off the production line as our Star Factory continues to grow. These vehicles are slated for future flight tests just like today's, and in fact, just this week we static fired our next ship that's planning to fly and expect to test the booster as soon as the launch mount is free from today's flight test.
Now, as a reminder, today is still just a test. While we really hope to get our splashdown location in the Indian Ocean, but any data received will help us improve. It's the 3rd of many future flight tests for Starship before it becomes fully operational.
And that's the goal of flight tests. They teach us about the limits of our design and improve our understanding of the vehicle, and ultimately help us make Starship more reliable and rapidly reusable. So whatever the outcome and however far we get, we can promise excitement. And things look like they are moving fast at Starbase.
我们可以看到这个网上有朋友留言说，发射都选德州吗？事实上，主要的发射场在佛罗里达州，也就是在美国的东南角。一方面是比较接近赤道，德州的话主要是星舰基地所在地。也是目前 SpaceX 在这里大规模开发进行这个星舰的准备跟研发。目前我们看到的是一个发射架，而第2个发射架也正在赶工星舰当中。
Originally, it was not designed to be reusable. We wanted to.
有朋友问这个冒着白色的烟雾是什么？白色的烟雾是因为这个推进剂是进行这个低温灌注，非常低的温度。那因为跟外面的稍微温度高的空气相结合，就会有这个冷空气凝结的一个现象。
Have directly improved the operations, and they've helped us change our understanding of what's possible when it comes to rocket and spacecraft reusability. Now, we're just Under T-minus 6 minutes, so I think it's another good time to check in with Dan for the rest of terminal count. How are we looking, Dan?
我们来听德州现场最新状况。
Thanks, Shiva. We're looking good. 5 minutes, 35 seconds, and we're counting down. We are just about at closing the prop load sequences on booster and ship. Just a reminder, ship we're going to close out at around 3 minutes and 30 seconds, booster at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Once all of that prop is loaded on board, we'll have about 10 million pounds of propellant on both stages of Starship. Now, after that happens, we'll go through a couple of different procedures with the ground. We'll do what's called pushbacks, clearing out the lines between our prop farm and the vehicles themselves before we get to launch. And then in the next few minutes, we'll get the final guidance system alignments, some final thrust vector control on the booster checks, and all that will be performed. And again, if we need to hold, we have a hold gate built in at T-minus 40 seconds where we can hang out. It sounds like today we'll have about 15 minutes to hold at T-minus 40 if we need to. If we hit that right now, it looks like the most.
刚才现场解说说，他们在这个40秒左右有可能会把倒计时的时钟暂停哦。如果这个现象的话，他们依据今天的状况，还有15分钟可以利用，也就是说，延迟超过15分钟，今天的发射有可能被迫取消。但是如果在15分钟之内一切进行妥当，现场指挥官可以放行的话，就会在今天顺利进行发射。以上是德州目前的最新状况。
We have an opportunity to today hold for a few minutes. And this is a really cool thing about Starship. And we don't have this opportunity with Falcon or Falcon Heavy. Up until the T-minus 40-second point, aborts are just holds. So anything that would trigger an abort prior to T-minus 40 seconds becomes a hold. So that's a really cool feature to allow the team
to wait for final checkouts or assess prop levels, engines, avionics, vehicle pressurization. It's really helpful to ensure a liftoff.
Yeah, and that's something that is very different from Falcon. I'm sure people have watched our launches, and then we get right down past prop load and then have to scrub because of weather or scrub because of an issue on the vehicle.
And we don't have the same constraints on our propellant and our system with Starship, which gives us more availability in the window. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes the winds dip just enough where you can launch the rocket safely. And otherwise, if you didn't have that ability to hold a few minutes, you might miss that window and then have to.
有朋友问，就说是起飞后要1小时后才会降落。今天的计划是大概是65分钟。
Still continuing to progress. We're looking at liftoff in just under almost 2.5 minutes from now.
有朋友问说，今天星舰是回收还是坠毁啊？是所谓降落，也就是是降落到海面上。这两个不论是助推段跟这个今天的星舰28号原型舰都不打算再度使用，不过会进行回收。
Flight test number 4 and new objectives there that'll eventually get us to that glorious, rapid, reusable future that we so badly want.
Yeah, for Flight 1, we wanted to clear the pad, and we did. For Flight 2, we wanted to get through hot staging separation, and we did. So today, we want to get even further than that and collect as much data as we possibly can. So with all that being said, we're going to check back in with Dan to take us through the final 2 minutes of terminal count.
哇！现在发射进行到距离发射时间1分45秒。你看到是目前SpaceX 在哈松，也就是南加州机场附近的企业总部大厅的现场状况。
We're starting to hear some good news that it looks like winds are not going to hold us up, so there's a good chance we blow right through that.
好消息，目前风势一切适合发射。
Just walking you through one last time, we're going to see the engines ignite about 4 seconds before we hit our T0. They're going to ignite in 3 different banks. You'll get 13 of the inners, 15 of the outers, and then the last 5 ignite just 2 minutes before T0. And then after that, the quick disconnect will retract. The engines will start to throttle up, and then we'll see liftoff about 1.5 seconds after T0. So we're under a minute away.
50秒
Don't be shocked if we hold at 40 seconds before, but it sounds like the winds are cooperating today. And we'd be able to move right past that, not tracking any other technical issues that could hold us.
Proceeding past our QD vent gate.
Through the QD
30秒
past that 40-second hold.
Vectors go for launch.
目前继续倒计时。
Flight Director Ty Huntington telling the team we are go for launch. So 20 seconds
指挥官
to go.
核准发射，交由自动程序。
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
点火，爬升，目前看左边的点状图，目前是所有引擎都在顺利的点火运作当中。
30 seconds into flight, we are feeling the rumble. We are seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor engines ignited on the super heavy booster.
好消息，33具猛禽2全点火。好，
Continuing to get good call outs. Our trajectory looking nominal. Systems looking nominal. Just amazing to see all 33 lit up.
52秒已经过了这个所谓 Max Q 最大动压点。
At this point, we've already passed through max Q, that maximum dynamic
哇，
pressure.
非常顺利发射升空。
Passing supersonic, so we're now moving faster than the speed of sound. Getting those onboard views from the ship cameras. Now the next major milestone is going to be a hot staging maneuver. Again, we're going to be doing that in just about 90 seconds. To do that, we're going to shut down all but the 3 center Raptor engines on Super Heavy.
下一个重要动作就是所谓的 MECO， 也就是助推段要关闭这个部分引擎，同时要进行热分离，在2分40几秒钟的时候，是一个非常重要的关键点。
So if you look close and we get good tracking, you might be able to see those center right after. And so those 6 engines will push Starship off of the booster.
要上层段先进行点火，等一下看右边这个图，我把 Courtesy 这个标志拿开。
Right at around the 3-minute mark on that hot staging maneuver. Again, we'll see the booster engines start to shut down. You'll see all but 3 lights go out in the middle. And then we'll see the engines ignite on ship, pushing it away. And that will start carrying the ship into space. Booster will start to do its flip and then move into the boost back burn, setting it up for eventual splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Stage separation.
大家可以看到右下角这6具引擎已经全部点亮，同时左边的中间所谓矢量控制的13具引擎也全部运作正常。哇，成功进行热分离，非常漂亮。
Kate, we got a Starship on its way to space and a booster on the way back to the Gulf.
Oh man, I need a moment to pick my jaw up from the floor because these views are just stunning. These are live views from Starship.
左边这个助推段的引擎点转图啊，在3分50秒左右，助推段的回推会停止。
First stage is currently performing the boost back burn, expecting that to last about 1 minute.
还有10秒助推段的引擎，助推段引擎现在开始熄火，只留中间的3具。
We're only using the super heavy boosters 13 center engines from here on out.
哇，助推段成功把引擎关闭啊！
See that in the left bottom corner.
下一个阶段在6分36秒的时候，助推段的速度会跨越音速，也就是左边。
Wow, these are just incredible views coming to us. Everything is looking good for both the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen or the super heavy booster, as well as on the right-hand side of your screen, that is Starship, or we also refer to that as the ship.
目前右下角是这个星舰本身的数据哦，左边是这个助推段的数据。助推段目前的速度是不断的加快哦，因为它在这个进入第大气层的一个过程当中。
To help slow it down. Just as a reminder of the stage 1 test objectives.
等一下，在6分46秒的时候，助推段降落燃烧将会启动。
Stage separation, which gorgeous, we cruised right through it, as well as
on a nominal trajectory.
Good news there, telling us that the path that Starship is on is good. Now, Starship's second stage is still firing its engines, and as you heard, following planned flight path. The ship objectives, we're looking for hot staging, again, cruised right through that. We're looking to demonstrate controlled ascent, as well as orbital insertion. Now, the bottom right-hand corner of the screen shows the ship engine graphics, so be sure to keep an eye on those.
Yep, Kate, like this is just a phenomenal test so far. Super Heavy is performing beautifully today. It's on its return leg of the journey. Ship continuing to burn its 6 engines, those larger circles.
您看到的分割画面，右边是这个星舰舰体，左边是助推段哦。
We're about 30 seconds away, just under 30 seconds away from the start of the boost back burn.
左边的助推段将要启动这个降落减速的燃烧点火。
Guiding us through the atmosphere back towards our splashdown site. Again, we're going for a splashdown, a soft splashdown. So for landing burn, we're going to expect to see the 13 center engines light, rapidly bring down the boosters.
左边注意那个高度的数据，目前只剩下7公里、6公里，准备要降落到海面。左边的这个助推段的高度，大家可以观察一下，还剩2公里、1公里。好，回推点火，回推点火。不知道在地面上的画面能不能捕捉到。
And to make it that far, to demonstrate the controlled re-entry up to that point is pretty darn good. Ship continuing to look nominal with its ascent burn. This burn lasting about 6 minutes total. And we're expecting that this burn will end just after T+8 minutes, about a minute from now. So far, though, I mean, congrats to the team. Making it this far is farther than we've gone on flight 2. Just wonderful views.
接下来的重头戏将会在星舰。星舰在8分35秒的时候，星舰引擎将会关闭，然后接下来要进行载荷舱门打开并且关闭的释放。这是未来释放 Starlink， 也就是星链的这个微卫星，是非常重要的一个步骤。在这边我们也可以看到这个星舰的高度保持在148公里左右，而且这个高度可以说相当稳定。好的，星舰引擎成功关闭，在8分35秒成功准时的关闭。大家可以看到右边哦。 目前可以说是在巡航的状态，在11分56秒的时候，会进行载荷舱门打开的示范，这个是一个非常重要的步骤。
Just completely blown away right now. What a day. Congratulations to the entire SpaceX team. I mean, this flight pretty much just started, but we're farther than we've ever been before.
可以看到现场的解说人员跟主持人非常的感性哦。
Just to recap where we've come, and it's only been 9.5 minutes. How has it only been 9.5 minutes? We lifted off right on time at 8:25 a.m. We didn't have to hold at our gate at all. We had 33 out of 33 Raptor engines open up and light and get us through a nominal ascent. Another successful hot stage. All 6 engines on the ship propelling us into orbit. We did see what looked like a nominal boost back burn. And then we did make it all the way to the landing burn this time. Didn't light all the engines that we expected, and we did lose the booster. We'll have to go through the data to.
在11分56秒，载荷舱门会进行打开的示范。大家可以看到，目前的液态氧跟液态甲烷的这个存量，实际上已经非常低了。在有2个这个读数表，大家可以看一下，同时也可以看到目前在飞行的高度跟速度。
Including that first ever Raptor relight in space, so it's just going to be incredible. So all of that still to come. The mission just started, but wow, what a liftoff! What a hot stage! What an amazing sight to see Starship there in outer space.
I can't believe we're seeing it in space. This is awesome.
还有1分钟进行载荷舱门打开。
About 30 minutes or so, we'll be back around the T+40-minute mark, and that'll be Starship continuing to coast, hit those ambitious test objectives, and then continue on to re-entry. We're not totally sure what video that we'll get, since that normally comes to us as we overfly ground stations, and we don't have a ton of those along our trajectory. But as we have video, we'll be sure to bring that to you.
Starlink may be able to bring us additional communication paths today that will allow us to talk to Starship through re-entry with no communications blackout period.
之前我看到一则报道说，这一次的试射会有不一样的安排，也就是利用星链来追踪并且来捕捉这个星舰重返大气层的一个画面。这个其实是一个创举，无论是 NASA 或是过去各国的火箭在重返大气层都会有短暂的时间是失去音讯跟联络的。今天若是能够不断的取得讯号跟联系将会是一个新的尝试。
Objective is already underway. So come back here, stick around till T+40 minutes for coverage of Starship's deorbit burn demonstration, followed by its re-entry and what is sure to be an exciting splashdown.
目前星舰在飞行途中星舰的这个工程人员也在进行一些重要的释放，包括这个载荷舱门打开、推进剂输送转换，以及载荷舱门关闭，并进行这个猛禽引擎太空中重新点火的演示。在40分、41分的时候，会恢复这个现场有这个播报人员的相关解说。这是目前星舰正在飞行途中的一些画面跟状况。下个重要时间点是距离发射40分钟左右，也就是星舰要在太空中进行这个猛禽2引擎的重新点火。有朋友刚刚加入我们，很关心的说是有没有出意外，有没有这个进行这个的顺利啊？事实上，目前运作还算正常。没错，有网友说目前正在进行上储存罐主燃料罐的一些这个液态转移测试。大家可以关心一下右下角的星舰巡航的速度哦。目前的巡航速度是每小时26000多公里哦，这已经非常接近所谓的近地轨道的入轨速度哦。如果是在150英里，也就是240公里的这个高度的话，要达到28000公里每小时哦，就算是达到这个入轨的标准。目前稍微还差一点。没错，就是第一宇宙速度啊！其实这个在留言区以及我们一起关心直播的朋友当中啊，许多应该都是这方面的专业或者是专家啊。另外就是刚才大家提到这个液态推进剂的转移哦，实际上这是在近地轨道首次进行这样的示范跟演练，也就是人类第一次进行不同储存槽之间的转换。这个演练对于未来在近地轨道建立这个补充燃料的补充推进剂的储存槽是非常重要的示范。 目前星舰的高度大概在距离地表222公里。目前现场的转播还在等这个星舰发送回来的讯号。有朋友问这个燃料还够吗？目前星舰它的引擎是在关闭的状态，是在这个巡航利用这个速度在巡航的过程。再问这个第一级是否成功入海啊？目前得知是成功降落到海面，在墨西哥湾。好的，我们可以看到现在讯号又重新连上，可以看到星舰舰体摄影机所传回来的画面。目前距离地表是230公里。有朋友在问在大陆，也中国大陆目前能不能在天空看到星舰飞行我可以在这边分享，就是整个飞行路径是不会经过这个亚洲的大陆是从这个墨西哥湾往东越过南太平洋南大西洋一直到印度洋是走这个路径，所以不可能也不会在中国大陆或亚洲的大陆上空会看到星舰飞过。据我得到的讯息这一次无论助推段以及所谓的这个星舰舰体本身都没有打算让它直立回收，也就是我们平常看到这个猎鹰9号回收的一个画面，它是直接降落在海面上，当然会进行这个采集跟废弃物的回收，再进行研究，再进行组装清理。但是本身是没有安排它这个直立降落的这个动作，特别是星舰降落的速度会非常快。 如果您跟我一样也在守候今天的星舰发射，也是第一次来访这个频道，也欢迎您订阅，同时支持我们能够让我们继续进行类似的直播。我看好多朋友在讨论第一集火箭究竟哪去了第一集火箭是目前是降落在墨西哥湾，一直到距离这个海面1公里的时候，我们还接收到讯号，以及它的相对速度跟它的高度。至于最后的结果以及最后的状况，还有画面能不能捕捉，我们可能要等一下才能够知道。星舰什么时候回来？有朋友在问星舰还有40分钟左右会达到这个预定降落的印度洋目标区。看到有朋友帮我做宣传说看了3次直播，非常感谢。希望借这个园地跟大家互相交流。有很多东西都是从这个留言当中吸取讯息，而且从中间学到很多东西。谢谢大家鼓励。有朋友在问1个小时环球，这个问题问得非常好。大家如果特别注意我已经不再用这个环地球进行测试上一次要飞到这个夏威夷海面附近的时候距离环地球实际上都还差上一大截。这一次它的路径更短，是在印度洋附近就会降落海面，所以已经不能称为这个环地球测试实际上可能2/3圈都不到。这是目前我能得知的一些最新状况。大家可以发觉这个画面是断断续续因为在飞行的途中能够在这么高速的状况下能够取得连续的讯号跟画面是非常不容易的事情。谢谢大家留言以及大家鼓励也谢谢大家的订阅跟按赞。这网友内行的，下次就要夹筷子了吧？这是指他们的机械这个接收架被俗称为筷子希望能够下次能够直接捕捉返回的无论是这个助推段也好，或者是捕捉星舰。 这一次单缸飞行的是星舰28跟助推段10，所以应该是 B10 跟 S28。谢谢有朋友加关注啊。没错，下一个节点是40分46秒，星舰猛禽发动机在太空时重新点火。什么时候重新进入啊？重新进入的程序啊，目前是在这个49分05秒的时候展开重新进入的程序。目前的画面是空中传回来，目前星舰正在飞行的画面。大家可以看到右下角的读数啊，目前引擎是在关闭的状态。它的速度是保持在26,162公里每小时，距离地面的高度大约是在232公里，也就是在俗称定义当中的太空当中。还有大概几分钟的时间就要进行这个星舰引擎的重新点火。在40分46秒，猛禽引擎要进行太空中重新点火的演示。这个讯号断断续续啊。刚才大家有特别注意这个星舰舱门打开跟关闭，事实上在11分56秒载荷舱门是排定打开，在28分21秒载荷舱门会进行关闭，这也是为未来这个所谓大规模在空中这个发送星链，也就是微卫星进行这个演示跟示范。如果您现在才加入我们，目前星舰已经顺利发射升空，并且以助推段式成功的分离，目前是正在飞越大洋的飞行途中。有朋友问这个星舰会不会调转这个姿态再进行点火？大家可以看到这个在下边，在这个计时时钟跟这个右边的读数之间有一个星舰的一个形态。你如果小心观察的话，它实际上是会浮动的，所以你可以看到待会它这个角度跟变动在点火的时候的一个状态谢谢大家订阅加入讨论。 现在高度有点下降了，距离这个海平面的高度是204公里。高度在下降为201公里，速度是保持在26265公里每小时。看有朋友很热心在讨论这个第一集，也就是助推段回收有没有成功啊？助推段也是直接降落在海面上，至于能不能成功回收，我还要等进一步的讯息。非常有意思这个网友不说我还没注意到，也就是在飞行途中你会看到有一些像是白点或小碎片经过，这究竟是什么东西？这个我还要进一步的找答案。没错，成功太迟了，不是第一个成功入轨的一氧甲烷火箭，没错。第一个成功入轨的应该是中国的朱雀2号火箭。另外在不久前如果有关心我们直播的，也就是火神半人马火箭是属于中大型火箭，也是这个甲烷火箭成功入轨。至于它在什么样的高度重新点火，有朋友是说是在150公里左右的高度，我所得知的讯息是在40分46秒，现在只剩下在大概3分钟左右的时间要进行引擎的重新点火。接下来一个重要步骤，也就是在第40分46秒的时候要在太空中重新点火，这是下一个重要的科目。然后再过大概8-9分钟星舰要重返地球，也就是要重新进入大气层。另外在发射后62分钟左右，星舰的速度会跨越音速，在1分03秒的时候，星舰的速度会降为亚音速，预计在64分39秒，也就是将近65分钟左右，星舰预计会降落海面。我们来听现场的相关解说。
Just a wonderful day. Kind of to recap the objectives a little bit. Booster completed its ascent, ignited its 33 Raptor engines. We demonstrated a successful hot staging for the second time. Booster completed the boost back burn, didn't quite accomplish the landing burn, and then had a hard splashdown in the Gulf. Meanwhile, ship completely successful after the hot staging. We had a good 6-engine burn of the Raptor vacuum engines and sea level engines, and then we've commanded a number of demonstrations.
刚才有网友说对了，助推段虽然是成功回推点火，也成功的回推停止点火，也进行了降落的燃烧启动点火，但是并没有在这个完成这整个动作至于目前助推段的下落，还要进一步的搜寻跟说明。
Incredible.
Yeah, that's right, guys. We should be just about 40 seconds away, 40 or 50 seconds away, if we do this relight demo. Do want to stress this is not a
下一个是非常重要的步骤，也就是猛禽2要在太空中重新点火，这具有这个调整方位的功能也为未来星舰可以成功回收是要奠定基础。
While it's in outer space, while it's in microgravity, all of the different complexities that come with lighting this engine again after it's already done an ascent burn, but you're now coasting through space. This is going to be really important anytime we want to do in-space maneuvers in the future, like eventual deorbit burns, any of our translunar injections that'll have Raptor engines firing back up. We may not do it. There is all of the guidance is loaded into Starship's computer itself, so if it doesn't see the values that it needs to, we could just skip the burn. So we are waiting to find out if that's going to happen or not. If it doesn't, as we said in the beginning, we're on a pretty steep trajectory that we are coming home no matter what, regardless of doing a burn. This was done just so we can really
目前已经过了这个预定排定点火的时间，不过这个现场解说员打了预防针，告诉大家，就算没点火，星舰还是会回到地球。
In the Indian Ocean that we're going to be targeting for splashdown today. It does sound like we are skipping past the on-orbit relight demo this time.
看起来这个重新点火并没有成功啊。
Through our post-flight data review, but it did sound like we did pass through that burn. So now that's going to start setting us up for re-entry.
准备要进行重新进入地球的程序
So coming up next around T+49 minutes is Starship re-entry. Now, this is typically a portion of
在
flight where we
49
don't
分
have
05秒的
communications
话
with
会重
spacecraft
新进
because
入大
they're
气层。
re-entering the Earth's atmosphere at or around orbital velocity, about 8 kilometers per second or roughly 5 miles per second. Super fast. Now, at those speeds, the spacecraft's interaction with the atmosphere results in friction and creates a plasma field around the vehicle. That blanket of plasma distorts communication frequencies, so we're basically left with a brief communications blackout. Now, we might get some telemetry back through a connection to the tracking and data relay satellite system, also known as TDRS. But if the plasma doesn't entirely block it, that connection will be at a very slow data rate and definitely too slow for any video.
But that's why Starship and Starlink are a great partnership. Starship is so big that it will
这就是我们刚才讲说，重返大气层的途中会有一段时间讯号无法这个传送。如果借助星链，他们想要尝试看这一次能不能够成功传送。现在是在星舰舰体本身所传回来的画面。
And so we're hoping that the Starlink on board will let us, just like we're seeing these videos now, see through that plasma field by maintaining a continuous communication lock with the satellites on orbit through the wake that Starship leaves behind.
大家可以看到这个高度不断降低，但是速度不断加快。
Don't be surprised if we manage to get some signal hiccups through. We're still learning about what that wake will actually look like in practice and whether we're able to get that live continuous high-speed data during re-entry.
至于这个返回的角度，大家可以看到这个星舰目前在调整这个方位跟姿态。
Gather as much data as possible. It's been said the data is the payload on one of these flights, where we're putting this flight hardware in a real flight environment, trying to learn about it as much as possible. Re-entry is going to be a really critical phase of flight. We really want to know how the ship's going to perform, especially that heat shield, as we're going through the hypersonic re-entry. So if something were to go wrong during this re-entry, we want as many paths as possible to collect that information, that data, just to, again, just continually feed back into the Starship program to make each flight more reliable, more successful.
Acquisition signal, Mauritius.
Now, if Starship manages to make it all the way through re-entry, we'll collect valuable data on Starship flying through the Earth's atmosphere at hypersonic speeds, meaning more than 5, or at this point, will be more than 5 times the speed of sound. Now we're watching these live views, HD views by the looks of it, thanks to Starlink. You can see that the flaps there on the ship might be actuating. Certainly some incredible visions of planet Earth behind Starship. Now, we've already validated Starship's ability to fly and land at subsonic speeds. You might recall those suborbital flights from a few years ago, and we can see those flaps there. So getting data on aspects like heating and control while
现
traveling
在高度
way faster
降为
than we did before is
107
going to be
公里。
critical to eventually bringing Starships back from space for rapid reuse. So I mentioned those flaps. That's one of the things that enables Starship to help control itself and survive the heat of reentry, which, like we said before, we're expecting that reentry to occur around T plus 49 minutes. So we're getting pretty close here.
And what you're seeing here, it looks like the vehicle is sort of moving back and forth. Part of what you're also seeing is one of the cameras, this onboard view that we have, is on the end of a flap. Starship has front flaps and rear flaps in the vehicle. So we've got 4 of those. And oh man, we can see the heating on those flaps as we're starting to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is where the Earth's atmosphere is doing the work to slow us down.
Now, like we said, this plasma field is, wow, what a view. We hope to maintain these views throughout. Starship is so big that we're hoping that the plasma field doesn't entirely blanket the entire vehicle. Right now, it is not. The Starlinks are
Views brought to you
still,
by Starlink.
yeah, the Starlinks are still.
这是在重返大气层过程当中摩擦所产生的一个现象，也通常在这时候讯号会失去。我们可以看到，无论是中国的航天发射，或者是美国各项的火箭在太空船重返途中都会出现这样的现象。我们可以看这样的讯号可以持续多久？哇哦！现在距离是地面只有90公里。没错，靠大气来减速，这个讯号有可能断断续续。
The heat shield tiles doing their work. We talked about it earlier. Up to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit that those heat shield tiles are dissipating as we are re-entering.
Yeah, now this was one of the critical, or rather the key mission objectives that we were hoping to hit today. We have never, like I said before, this is the fastest and furthest that Starship has ever flown. So this is the first time that we're getting to collect this re-entry data and understand how these 18,000 hexagonal heat shield tiles are working together to protect the belly of Starship as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Once again, the atmosphere is doing us a big favor here by... The atmosphere is actually doing us a huge favor here by acting as a braking system for Starship.
速度应该还会增加到这个跨越音速在62分钟左右，在63分钟以后，速度才会降为亚音速。
So they can absorb the heat of the Earth's atmosphere. And so that's the purpose that they are serving during the hypersonic phase, and then again during the subsonic.
大家可以看到画面的是分割画面，右边是德州星舰基地，左边是哈送控制中心。
On Starship itself, as that plasma builds, we're hoping that we can bring these views back to you. But you can see the telemetry there on the right-hand side of your screen. If you watch closely, you can see the speed decelerating. Again, that's the friction of the atmosphere resulting in this plasma field, or excuse me, the blanket that is potentially blocking the Starlink terminals right now. So we'll bring those views back to you if we get them. But right now, for those of you that have recently joined, Starship is currently re-entering Earth's atmosphere. This is super exciting because it's the furthest and fastest that Starship has ever flown.
It's just absolutely incredible. Major test milestone, something we wanted to accomplish on Flight 2, getting to it today. So just awesome.
Now, we actually have some heat shields here. So these are what's doing all the work on Starship right now. There are 18,000 hexagonal heat shields like these. So this one that I have is flat, like this is what would be positioned on the flaps of Starship, whereas Shiva has
可以看到这个航天器在重返大气层当中，借由空气摩擦力来减速。这个是星舰在用的这个隔热瓦。
To make sure that the structure of the vehicle doesn't carry all that thermal load, so we can recover the vehicles eventually and get to rapid reuse on them.
They're really lightweight. They sound a little different than I would have expected them to, but they are ceramic, and these are what's helping Starship survive through this period of entry. We're not sure how far we're going to make it. Again, this is the furthest that we've gotten in our
目前右下角的读数是在停止当中啊，不过这个计时器还在继续运作。
Today has been a huge success given where we've gone and how much further we've gotten with both the booster and Starship itself.
And one of the beautiful things about Starlink on board the vehicle, we were getting that high-speed video. High-speed video is a very high data rate, and usually video comes after you get your telemetry. So hopefully we were able to get some wonderful data throughout the entry period, which is normally something we have to wait for until after splashdown when we get that data off the data recorders.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned before two at the forward end or the top end, and two at the bottom or aft end, and they operate independently to aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude or positioning during atmospheric flight and enable precise landing at the intended location. So today we are intending to splash down in the Indian Ocean, and we're hoping that we can make it that far, but regardless, it is an exciting end to what has been an exciting day.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've had some tests in the past. We had suborbital campaigns where we have tested out the aerodynamic flaps at subsonic speeds.
现在由于这个讯号中断了，大家可以看到右边的右下角的读数是在停止的状态。这时候两位这个现场主持人是不断的在电话，希望能够等到最新的资讯。
So going through that control phase where we're going from faster than the speed of sound to below the speed of sound was one of the objectives today.
没错，现在星舰是在返回地球的途中，也就是第二级火箭星舰舰体本身在返航的途中。
So we're not there yet. We're about 10 minutes away from that point. So again, that is when Starship would be traveling slower than the speed of sound, thanks to the atmospheric braking system.
And so right now we're still waiting to see if we're going to get data back from this ship. We might be in a bit of a blackout period right now. So still waiting to hear the status on it. But yeah, we got to the actual entry portion of today. We started into peak heating, which was just a really big milestone.
没错，目前是在所谓在 blackout 的一个状态，也就是无法接受讯号，在这个被讯号中断的一个状况，目前还要等几分钟。
20 times the energy given the velocity that we're moving at, and all of that energy just gets converted into heat, and then we need to use those tiles to just help dissipate that heat. They're not ablative like you would see on something like Dragon, which uses an ablative in the capsule shape. So they are these tiles that are made to be reusable. So any data we're getting on the actual temperatures it was seeing during heating, all of that is just really hugely valuable. Where Starship is really unique is, and Kate and Shiv have talked about it a couple of times, is once we're through this kind of hypersonic section and we get down to the subsonic. And that's where we really learned a lot and proved that Starship's really just its basic shape could work. And we did that during the suborbital campaign. Again, if you compare it to the shuttle, which entered, it had the wings.
今天的试射排定的时间是在64分39秒，星舰会降落海面，这是表定的时间哦。另外，在这个表定在62分16秒，也就是1小时02分16秒，星舰速度会跨越音速，这是原先排定的计划。当然，计划是赶不上变化，中间还会有许多的一些节点会出现变化。目前飞行时间是55分05秒，这个是电脑的示意图哦，并不是真正的画面。
Just watching on actual Starship video, which is pretty incredible. But we go through peak heating. One of the benefits of today's trajectory, actually, we got closer to what the heating profile will be on just a normal mission when you compare it to our previous flights, which were headed out to Hawaii. So we go through peak heating and then we hit subsonic, and then Starship splashes down in the ocean. Again, we're not doing a landing burn on this flight. And we're not expecting Starship to survive the impact. We're not going to be recovering any of the hardware. For now, though, we are just still waiting to see if we're going to get some signal back. We're currently at a loss of signal with Starship. Don't know for sure what its status is, and so we're just continuing to listen in. But it was pretty incredible seeing the flaps really do their thing.
很显然哦，不止我们不知道目前的状况，目前是在所谓的 blackout， 也就是这个所谓的一个障碍区当中。无论是刚才的在哈颂的2位主持人，以及现场在德州的解说员，我们都看到是不断的在补充一些资讯啊，在同时在等待最新的画面跟资讯进来。
Yeah, and you'd brought up a really interesting point too, that for on shuttle, you are gliding in, going back to a runway on Starship because we're landing vertically. We are basically coming down, and then we've seen this during the suborbital campaign. But during the suborbital campaign, we did the flip maneuver and then light our engines for a landing burn. And that's also really important for some of our other terrestrial destinations. That we don't have as much of an atmosphere on Mars. There is pretty much no atmosphere. There's some great views from our previous test campaigns of a landing burn and upright landing. But on the moon, there is no atmosphere. On Mars, the atmosphere is extremely thin, so you actually need some other sophisticated techniques that other landers have used to land there. And so this vertical landing technique is really important to landing on destinations.
有朋友问什么时候会降落回来啊？表定的时间是64分39秒会降落。所以大概还有6-7分钟的时间。
Opening and closing, the first demonstration of opening and closing the PEZ door, which is where we will deploy Starlink satellites from in the future, as well as gathering data on how the heat shield tiles performed during the entry period. And so far, all of that has gone really well. Overall, it's been pretty great, and it's great to see how those initial tests that we performed a couple years ago for those high altitude tests allow us to see what those will look like in the future. But this piece that we're doing today of, okay, if we are coming back from orbital velocity and we're going through that entry period, that is the missing piece, right? We already figured out how to land once the ship gets to a certain velocity or altitude, and it's really this piece that we were trying to figure out today. How do we get Starship to survive orbital velocity atmospheric entry? And we hope to find out soon.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about rapid iteration and how we do design. Part of our philosophy is testing early and often and trying to test in a way that is as flight-like as possible. But there's only so much you can do in a chamber where you're trying to simulate the atmosphere in a laboratory. So there's nothing quite like when the heat shield tile hits the atmosphere in flight to gather that wonderful data and prove out some of the analyses and probably teach us a bunch of things that we didn't quite get right.
For sure. And obviously, for those of you that have been watching along with us, those were incredible views to see of that entry period where we saw the heat generating because of friction as
目前我们还在等待这个星舰所传回来的讯号。距离表定的降落时间还有将近4分多钟。
We would be expecting the vehicle to be approaching subsonic or slower than the speed of sound speeds in 3.5 minutes from now. So if it's still up there in one piece, it still has a way to go. We're not there just yet. But we saw that plasma field building up around the exterior, which
现在他们还是不确定星舰是不是完好的状态下，说是还要等等，很可见即使在哈颂的转播台也没得到任何确切的消息。
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are hearing through some of the telemetry that we did. It did look like we lost Starlink and our TDRS data flow at the exact same time. Now, if both of those signals are cutting out at the exact same time, that could mean we lost the ship. It has been several minutes since we've gotten any data from Starship. We are waiting just a couple more minutes just to see if we can get any additional confirmation, but that is one data point that we're tracking, and that could indicate that we had a loss or a breakup of the ship during that re-entry. So
现在在所谓 blackout 的期间，他们不确定星舰是完好的还是解体的状态，目前还要等待进一步的数据。这是非常关键的几分钟。
So we'll just keep on listening in on the loops here, see if we hear anything over the next couple of minutes. And that might bring a close to a pretty successful day so far. So again, we did lose the TDRS. That's the tracking and data relay satellite. That's the satellite system that pretty much every spacecraft operating in orbit right now will use to get data. We were able to get some signal through that. And then we were also getting data back through Starlink.
Live view here of mission control down at Starbase. So these are all the folks who are experts on the various different systems, taking a look at the live data that we did have. Probably in mission mode still, but
absolutely.
It would be so tough to stay focused with what an exciting day we've had today.
Yeah, to quote Monty Python, I'm not dead yet. We don't know, as Dan said. We did lose connection with TDRS, which is the tracking and data relay satellite system, and Starlink at the same time. So it is a realistic possibility that we lost Starship, which honestly was always on the table. We didn't know how far it was going to get. The further we could fly and the more data we could collect was always the biggest win. And so regardless of, if we did lose the vehicle and we are not able to, make it all the way to our intended splashdown, note that we weren't intending to recover this vehicle, either vehicle, the Super Heavy booster nor the Starship. We weren't intending to recover either of them. They were both going to
主持人再次强调说，今天发射科目本来就不打算要回收助推段跟星舰本身，不过现在距离表定发射时间降为亚音速已经超过了。
Possibly anticipating news that we lost Starship due to basically a double blackout from TDRS and Starship data at the same time.
But it's worth mentioning, this is the first time that we have come back at these speeds in any of the test flights that we've done so far with Starship. So we are trying to prove out that the heat shield works as intended, that the controllability at those hypersonic speeds works as intended. So if we were able to get back any data on that, that means the next version, what happens on flight 4, 5, 6, is going to be better.
We must be able to get some because we saw incredibly gorgeous high definition views of that entry period whenever it was initially starting. So we must have gotten some data
today
there.
has been otherwise a phenomenal day.
Incredible.
Liftoff on time, full ignition of all of the boosters, engines, successful hot staging, and then ship took it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. We were able to see the ship actually make it further as well as the booster. We were hoping that the booster would perform a soft water landing, but we lost it.
看这样的状况，有可能并不太乐观，也就是星舰有可能在这个重返大气层的途中造成毁损。已经过了预定的降落时间，今天的直播很可能在很短时间就会结束。
When we get even better views, I'm sure.
Exactly.
And we also hit a number of our other ambitious test objectives. We had a chance to at least initiate the commands for a propellant transfer demo within the vehicle. This is something that Starship.
有朋友在问是空中解体还是直接这个坠入水面？这两者之间其实差很多，因为他们很想知道这个星舰本身的隔热盾能不能发挥功用。如果隔热盾不能发挥功用，这会是一个很大的问题。
As expected, but that's going to be critical to deploying payloads in the future once Starship becomes operational. So a number of test objectives hit. Much more accomplished than Flight 2 and making steady progress towards a fully, rapidly reusable, reliable Starship.
Absolutely.
And hey, Kate, and hey, Shiva, we were just hearing on the loops, we are making the call now that we have lost Ship 28. So as we were possibly expecting, we lost the data a couple of minutes ago. We haven't heard from the ship up until this point, and so the team has made the call that ship has been lost. So no splashdown today, but again, just it's incredible to see how much further we got this time around. We had a couple of those ambitious objectives that you guys were just walking through that we're able to take advantage of while Starship was in outer space flying over our planet for the very first time. So that was just really incredible. Obviously, there's a lot to go through. Everyone always wants to know right off the bat what happened. Takes us a little bit of time, but I can assure you as soon as we start finding things out, we're going to let everybody know. And I know everybody's going to be excited for the next one. I mean, as I pointed out in the beginning, there's 4 super heavy boosters either fully stacked or getting stacked right behind me. We've got other ships ready to go as well. So it's going to be a really busy time down here at Starbase as we look to really fly Starship as much as possible, get this vehicle ready to go for all the important things it's got to go do.
And with that, we got to say a huge congratulations to our teammates and everyone who's supported the Starship program. There's been flames and reds along the way, but third time's the charm, and we made it to space. We also a big thanks to all of our future customers for your support. And we want to give a big thanks to the people of Cameron County, Texas, for their support, as well as the Coast Guard and the Federal Aviation Administration.
Be sure to follow the SpaceX account on X for more updates from today's test flight and future Starship tests. But before we go, we want to wish SpaceX a very happy birthday. The company was founded on this day in 2002 when it basically consisted of this small team, a carpet, and a mariachi band. I don't know about you, but we're feeling 22. Also, it's Pi Day.
主持人有一些
Yeah, but I mean, Pi Day is constant and never ending, so shouldn't every day be Pi Day from now on?
I mean, that's a really good point, and I think after a test like today's, we all deserve some pie.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
好的，今天的直播就到这里结束，非常谢谢大家收看。谢谢大家的收看，我们下次再会。